We are live. Welcome back. I don't know what's happening. There we are.
There we go.
There we go. We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my other co-host, Joe DeLeone. Joseph,
not much. The one time it rains out of a weekend every single year in Los Angeles, we've got that right now. It is pouring here. I'm freezing my butt off, but nonetheless, I'm excited to dive in on the Pac-12, man. The Pac-12 is a joke with everything we're about to talk about here with this TV rights deal stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately, I am not what you would call a conspiracy theorist, okay? Like, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in conspiracies. I believe in facts, right? But today I do have a conspiracy, and I think that everybody's in on it, and they know that they're in on it. And I think another topic that we'll bring in today will validate my point on this. Yesterday, if you saw, in a topic we'll get to, Miami is getting popped by the NCAA for recruiting violations in women's basketball because of their mega booster, John Ruiz, who ultimately met with players before he was apparently supposed to, even though in the state of Florida, you can meet with high school athletes for NIL deals, non-depending on where they're going. So I do think football will ultimately get involved in all of this. We'll touch on that, but I will put these two together as I think that there is a conspiracy, Joe, working on here, because I do think that the powers that be do want this to make as much like the NFL as they want to.
Right. I think there's going to be a lot of allegeds said during that segment, but at the same time, I think you'd have to be pretty naive if you're an onlooker in this situation to think women's basketball. Now, those two recruits are massive, massive recruits, and they're the biggest NIL entities, I think, out there right now, the Cavander twins, or however you pronounce it, because of their TikTok presence. But you'd have to be pretty naive to think that there were no conversations and the same setup with Ruiz, with some of the football recruits. And the reason why that was an issue was because it was orchestrated by the head basketball coach for women's basketball. And again, you'd have to be pretty naive to think that there isn't something going on.
But again, though, and I get to a point, though, where, Joe, that I sit here and say, in the state of Florida, you're allowed to do that.
Well, the point is that you're allowed to have those conversations, but the reason why it was a violation is that the coach orchestrated it. That was where it came into play.
That's my point. Yes. That's my point. Sorry. Ron DeSantis signed into law long ago that the head coach can facilitate it. That is why the whole Jaden Rashada thing was so big, and why people were getting on to Billy Napier, because if you remember, we talked about Billy Napier in our last episode. That is why everybody was, it was a Cristobal versus Napier thing. So
there's a disconnect between the NCAA.
What I think is happening is the NCAA. Look, it's going to sound like I'm getting political here. I'm not. They attacked two white females in women's basketball. So let's just call a spade a spade. Yeah. So you're attacking two white women in women's basketball, knowing what happened with Texas A&M in college football? You mean to tell me that Texas A&M didn't do anything like what John Ruiz and those dudes did? You know how I know that they did? We'll talk on this, but I just bringing up some topics here. You know how I know that they did? A assistant coach at the University of or Texas A&M University, whatever, however you Texas A&M, whatever. They have a video that was on Twitter of a Texas A&M coach saying to recruits on a visit, he points to the a press box, and he says, "You see that box? If you guys come here, those are the people that are paying you to come here."
Oh God, could be any more blatant.
So that's my point. So the progressive Corona Bro, godly, the Corona Bro media is not talking about that because football is king. Yes. But they're going to attack women's basketball. Meanwhile, they refuse to talk about the, women and men and men and women's sports and all that. So that was on their docket. When they talked, I don't know if you know this, they took that agenda off their topic list and brought in John Ruiz and the two girls.
And that is, I understand where you're trying to take this, and I'm kind of curious to see.
Well, I'm not trying to take it political, but at the
no,
same
I know. I understand. My point is, I understand the angle that we were going after here, which is they're trying to make an example of this so that it can open the door for them to maybe put in place more restrictions around NIL. Is that kind of the angle that you're talking about?
I think so, but we'll get in that here today. Chris H says, meanwhile, Florida State is calling the ACC on their BS about TV revenue. If you didn't see, Florida State's athletic director went to their board of supervisors asking for $120 million to get so they could buy themselves out of their ACC contract. So they could go into the SEC per sources. So, Joe, this is moving pretty progressively. I know that Ross Dellinger and Robert Manuel Manziel, whatever his name is, said that that's not true. And then the Florida State's athletic director legitimately came out in a statement and said, I sure the hell did. So it makes this Ross Dellinger report about college football executives thing from the other day that we were talking about. It makes Ross look so bad when they say that, oh, he didn't do that. And he goes, yes, I did. Okay. So we'll see.
Yes.
Yes, Cody says Tony V got suspended for the weekend for tampering. So listen, they're going after. So Joe, and I'm glad that he brought it up. Tennessee's head baseball coach just got suspended for the weekend for having a guy on an illegal visit. So what
was the illegal visit? What was the stipulation of that?
Basically, if I'm not mistaken, he met with him too early before the guy went into the portal. So again, I guess they're trying to do something, but oh my God, this.
Were you dipping too much before the show?
I had one today. I'm trying to give up things for Lent. I just think that they are targeting the Met. We'll get to it in a minute. Let's lead off with that, though, and then we'll get into the Pac-12 because I think it all comes into one another. But I think that we do need to get into that as well. Jeff Brohm is the new head coach at Louisville. I know off the air you said that he was, I'm quoting you, a Rudy Poo candy. But
I didn't say that. I don't put words in my mouth, Blake. I'm optimistic. We'll see. We'll get into it, but I'm optimistic.
I literally have a team worth of people right here that says that you said
it. Is that team worth of people, Ben? Is that who that is? Your producer, Ben?
Anywho, Colin says, did Joe give up rooting for Notre Dame during Lent?
I did not give up. So, by the way, a little context here. Colin is one of my listeners who back in the old original FCS days, has found his way over to this show. So I have not given up rooting for Notre Dame for Lent. I would never do such a thing, although it does give me great pain being a fan of the University of Notre Dame.
He also says Joe wears a Florida A&M shirt 4 days a week. Is this true?
That's a bad joke from the other FCS show. Yes, I did wear that shirt way too much.
Okay. All right. I'd love to hear it. Couple more, and then Joe, we'll get rolling here. Yeah. Jason Brumfield says, heard through the grapevine that Joe wears an LSU shirt underneath his Notre Dame jersey.
We got a lot of accusations coming out here, and we're 10 minutes into the show.
Here's what happened, okay? And, yesterday you said I threw you underneath the bus. So so when I posted our video of us debating about Anthony Richardson, I got absolutely just blasted. I had one person in the DM. Let me pull up. His name is Roger. And Roger said, Blake, I knew that everything coming out of your mouth was an absolute lie to start off with. Now I know that you're completely and utterly full of dog shit. That's from Roger. So they were blaming me.
Very pleasant.
They were blaming me for saying that Anthony Richardson, I thought, was going to be the number 1 overall pick. And so I just had to tell everybody. Yes. So,
but that wasn't even the take, though. The take was he'll be in the discussion. And I was explaining why he would be in the discussion. I don't think he's going to be. I just think he is a part of the conversation now more than ever because of the timing of the combine and everything else. And it's typical internet anger where you don't listen to it, you don't read the headline, you don't read the description, and then you don't actually hear the argument. You just get mad because you read something and you saw a couple words that didn't make sense in your head.
I agree with that, but I just was tired of taking the beating all day for something I didn't even say.
By the way, before we get to the break, did you see on the YouTube somebody commented, "I feel bad for Joe. Blake just yells at him and doesn't let him get a word in."
I did see that. I did see that, and I almost commented, but then. So last night I was sitting there and I was about to comment because I was putting Jewel, our youngest to sleep, and I was like, this mother sucker. And I was like, well, you know what? He's not during the debate. He wasn't wrong. So you know what? I mean, but I think that's what makes our show great.
Yeah, I think it's more even than that person led on to believe. We yell at each other, so it's part of the bit.
All right, at last comment before we get rolling. Adam B says Joe has Brian Kelly as his background on his song. Can you confirm?
I can absolutely deny that. It's just a black image. No Brian Kelly. Why
are you so bland, man? You're drinking out of a mason jar.
This isn't bland. I had a different one, and then when my phone updated,
you know what you need to do?
What?
Listen to somebody who's lived life longer than you. You need to put a picture of a background of your phone as your girlfriend and you.
I'm not going to do that.
See, this little games that you men like to play with women and women like to play with men. See, listen, Joe, back in my day, okay, I just told Megan, Daddy's home, okay? Now, she doesn't watch my episodes because she gets enough of me already.
Yes.
So I get to say stuff like that without repercussions. So, anyway,
I'll make her my background if we get married. How about that? I'm not going to do it right now because
Jesus Christ, Joe. What about if you're engaged? Can you make
engaged? How about that? Engaged.
Okay.
Well, because anything can happen actually in between the engaged period and the marriage part. She could change her mind. I could change my mind.
No, that you won't. Don't get engaged if you're going to change your minds. All right.
That's true.
All right. Let's get this thing started. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all of those social media pages. If you're on Facebook, guys, y'all been killing it for us on Facebook during the live shows. Do us a favor, though, by hitting like and share to all of those groups, all of those social media pages, your own pages as well. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Joe, I'm looking at it right now. We're climbing up the subscriber rate. Now that we're closing in officially on 400 at 391.
We're at like 15 a show right now. That's the current rate, awesome. Which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And look, we're still trying to give $200 away. I will give someone $200 away as soon as we hit the 1,000. You have my word. We have been giving out money on AYS for such a long time. I don't even know what to do anymore. I'm just trying to give people money and go get people to subscribe to Ruffino and Joe Show and AYS. If you're listening there, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Do that for us. All right, Joe, let's get to our first break. Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. We're back in 50 seconds. Let's start off with John Ruiz and Miami Hurricanes and what maybe the landscape of college football as the NCAA looks like they're striking back. We're back in 50. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. All right, we got some breaking news. Alabama has hired Liberty's and now Auburn's inside linebackers coach Robert Bala. Sources tell ESPN he was in line for Liberty's next DC under the new coach there and Jamie Chadwell, and has also worked under new Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze last season at Liberty. So it looks as if that Alabama is moving very quickly. Joe, you always have a trickle effect. So we talk about this all the time. So Alabama hires their new inside linebackers coach, who is a former DC. This is something that Saban does a lot. Look, Austin Armstrong was a DC. Pete Golding was a DC. Like, he hires position coaches or DCs or former DCs at Alabama. So I think that that's a really good hire for inside linebacker coach, especially Joe. I will tell you something very quickly. I don't think people put enough what's the word I'm looking for here? Enough emphasis on Liberty beating Arkansas last year. Okay, the way that they did. If you talk to any SEC coaches around the country, they will tell you, like, they talk about their game a lot when it comes to, like, hey, plucking younger guys that are from that area or from that game and from Liberty. Interesting that he makes that leap, but obviously he's probably getting paid much better. So something to keep an eye out. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. Joe, I want to start off this as we are live. Everybody do us a favor by hitting like and share. In case you missed it yesterday, Miami got popped. So the NCAA, maybe I should give it better context. So the NCAA, a lot of fans that are college sports fans have been begging the NCAA to do something about the portal and about NIL. Well, within a 24-hour span, John Ruiz, who was a mega booster at Miami, and the two ladies, I forget their names. Do you remember the girls' names?
Cavander is the last name.
Right. So they get suspended for illegally talking to John Ruiz before they committed and went to the University of Miami. This weekend, Tony Vitello, the baseball coach, for the head baseball coach, who's really, and look, you can hate Tony Vitello all you want. A lot of people do, but it's really made college football must-watch TV. A lot of people are more in tune with college baseball now. He gets suspended for the weekend at minimum for a recruiting violation in the transfer portal. Joe, let me just tell you this. I have an issue, okay? I know that we have been begging the NCAA to do something. We even called for that last time on our show. But why are you going after sports that are struggling at times to make revenue and ends meet? Women's basketball is not the sport that you need to go after. Now, here's what I think. I think that college baseball and women's basketball, maybe from a recruiting aspect, don't know how to cover their tracks as much as maybe like A&M does with Jimbo. But we've had video of Texas A&M coaches legitimately talking to recruits, talking about how much the boosters are going to give them in NIL money, but yet you're popping two white female women, okay, who are TikTok sensations, but yet you're refusing to do anything with football. Why? Here's my conspiracy. The NCAA knows that guys like Greg Sankey, the Big Ten, and others are trying to separate from the NCAA. And I think that they're going to be more lenient on sports like football than they're going to be, and even probably men's basketball, because if you look at what's going on with men's basketball, there was all those investigations and coaches aren't even getting popped for it. But now you're going after the underlying sports that you can ultimately control, which the NCAA does control a lot of women's basketball and college baseball. The playoff in college baseball is run by the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Joe, I have an issue with that. So you mean to tell me that there's a Texas A&M coach that can go out there and actively recruit from NIL and get guys and them having the number one class, but yet you're hitting two girls? What for? Because they met with John Ruiz. By the way, state law says that they can. State law says that coaches can facilitate NIL contracts, and majority of the Southeastern Conference's a footprint when it comes to in-state law. So how can you hit them with an NCAA violation when it's state law says that they can do it? Those are the kinds of issues. Now, here's my ultimate thing, and why we don't talk about. We're not going to spend long times on those specific entities because we talk a lot of college football here.
Right.
I think that they're trying to get him from a college football perspective. I really think that this Jaden Rashada thing is being investigated, and this is something that they found, and they knew that they could pop John Ruiz in Miami on, and I think Florida could be next. There's a lot of rumblings going around here about this Jaden Rashada thing because, Joe, here's the ultimate thing. How can you convince me that Jaden Rashada was not talking to John Ruiz and people at Florida, and then you're going to hit these two girls? So why aren't you investigating the Jaden Rashada news? See,
right.
So that's my ultimate conspiracy. I don't know if it's really a conspiracy, more if it is just questions. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of sit in the same boat with you, and I understand the angle that you're talking about here. And part of me, the way that I'm looking at this is that they're trying to chip away at what has become an unstoppable entity, which is college football. Like you said, they know that the NCAA knows that they do not have the power, if anything, to try and knock down some of these bigger programs. They have lost all control, which has been blatantly obvious over the past couple of seasons. So they're trying to chip away in an attempt to set themselves up to regain some of that power. But I think this is all very telling of how the NCAA it doesn't have any power. It doesn't have any strength or anything to fight back in any of these circumstances. So they're trying to go after, as somebody said in the chat, the low-hanging fruit. They're trying to go after the programs and the sports that are the easiest to attack. There's not going to be any pushback if you suspend a couple women's basketball players because, the fan base for women's basketball is significantly smaller than for college football. Now, if college football is handed a massive sanction, they're unable to play, they're given a bigger fine than $5,000 like the women's basketball team was, there would be an uproar conversely in the situation. But I really do believe that this is, as much as it could be a conspiracy theory, I think this is also just added proof that they don't have any power in the college football world. And eventually we are getting closer and closer to a secession of college football from the NCAA. And this is just going to be more evidence for them to say, why the hell are we sticking around? If you're going to come over here and try to control us and do what we want to do, we're going to do our own thing. It's just a matter of who is going to be the leading voice to lead that separation. And I do think eventually it will be Greg Sankey in the SEC that will be the primary voice that is leading that separation.
I agree with you. The only thing about this low-hanging fruit, you mean to tell me college football hasn't given you low-hanging fruit? Okay, so what are we talking about here? Okay, and so the NCAA says that they're for NIL, and the court system literally tells them that you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about capitalism, and yet they're banning people. Now, I do think that they do have power. Let me tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
I do think if the NCAA wanted to come down on college football and set a precedent, they can. And I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like. I think that they should, because the last time that we talked, we said that college football needed a commissioner, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't just have the Wild Wild West in reference to everybody breaking the rules without any repercussions. Now, it's happening already. I think you need to establish yourself. Okay, you need to reestablish who you are as a governing body. Now, we're going to talk about
is women's basketball the way that they're going to do that? And I understand that,
no. I agree with you. What I'm saying is, if they're going to do it, ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, if they're going to do it, you need to do it to football. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And what's even crazier, okay, a lot of people think that I hate Will Wade, the former LSU basketball coach. I don't hate Will, okay? But Will got caught on a wiretap. Multiple people got caught on wiretaps. Hell, Penny Hardaway, we have for an absolute fact, we know for a fact, paid a player to move to Memphis. I think my point is they didn't do anything to Penny Hardaway. They haven't done anything to Will Wade. They haven't done anything to Bill Self. Rick Pitino literally had strippers and cocaine in dorm rooms and throwing parties the year that they won a national title. And Rick Pitino's back in the college basketball coaching, and people are saying that Rick Pitino's about to get a interview at the University of Ole Miss, or University of Mississippi, I should say. And then you're going to hit these low-hanging fruits. I'm not trying to sit here and say equality. I'm not trying to get political. I'm trying to understand what you do. It's like, it's like you're on the playground. This is what I feel like the NCAA is doing. I feel like you remember, Joe, when you growing up, like the kids on the playground, and you got the ultimate bully, the ultimate guy, the ultimate stud, the ultimate alpha. That's football. And the NCAA, who used to be that, okay, is sitting on the playground and they see a little weakling, see a little young 3-year-old toddler, and now they feel like they have to assert their dominance. So they're going over there and they're going to pick on a little 3-year-old toddler. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Now, do I think it's ultimately going to hit football in some cases? Yes. They need to establish something or it's going to get really bad. But here's another thing. You know why I think they're ultimately not doing anything too? We're about to talk about this because of the Pac-12. Yesterday it was reported, okay, as we transition here, it was reported that these TV deals for the Pac-12 aren't looking good. Apple doesn't want to get involved. ESPN's like, suck on my booty cheek. Like, we don't want anything to do with you. Ultimately, I think that ESPN and others are trying to run this more like the NFL because it's what they know more of, maybe, or the executives do. And the Pac-12 is in real danger. And when I talk about real danger, Joe, we could not have a Pac-12 within 2 or 3 years. Now you have Florida State's AD out here saying, look, I'm asking for our board of supervisors $120 million to go to get bought out to go to the SEC. Joe, this is getting really bad. And for the Pac-12 specifically, I have no idea what they're going to do. It's not, but here's another reason too, and why it's the ultimate money grab. Joe, when's the last time a Pac-12 team made the playoff? Washington.
It was Washington, the one, what was it, 2015, 2016?
Somewhere around there,
yeah.
Okay? Chris Peterson was the coach. He had Buda Baker, Vita Vea, Browning, John Ross. I mean, we remember that team, and they got absolutely blanked by Alabama. Joe, you want to know why nobody wants you? Okay? Because you're not producing anything, and I hate to say it like that, but when people talk about the ACC from a historic standpoint, which conference is better, it's why I side with the ACC. And the reason I side with them is because you do have a team in Florida State that can make the playoff this year. You have Clemson that's won 2 national titles in the last couple of seasons. So you sit here and you start asking yourself, and you have a big market. Oregon's a big market. Eugene's a big market. L.A., for crying out loud, was a big market, but I know that they're going to the Big Ten. And quite honestly, they fumbled the bag. And I would not be shocked, Joe, if the Pac-12 is not here in 2 years.
Well, so the biggest part here with the Pac-12 realignment, yes, I don't think it's going to be an entity at all. I don't think it's going to be a conference for football for very long after everything that's going out. But I think the lack of desire for TV rights deals, I say blatantly, it's the fact that they lost UCLA and USC, because USC is the biggest brand in the Pac-12. And on top of that, UCLA has a history of being a good, reputable program and is now suddenly really, really good with Chip Kelly leading them. So any big broadcasting partner is thinking to themselves, why do I want to buy into a conference that doesn't have big brands? And there's also murmurs that your other big brands in Utah, Oregon, Washington are considering moving to other conferences. Why the hell would I want to do that? It's one of the few conferences where it feels like there's not any meddling going on with these big broadcasting entities. We've got with the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10, where it's being orchestrated behind the scenes by these broadcasting partners. The Pac-12 is just a lone little ship right now that everyone's trying to jump off as it's slowly sinking. It is in a horrible, horrible state. And it's a joke that Apple TV is one of the broadcast partners that are on the table. I don't know that many people that have Apple TV. I jokingly tweeted this out. They're going to be signing a deal with Flow Sports before we know it. That is who their broadcasting partner probably is going to be. And if anyone's familiar with Flow Sports, it's freaking terrible.
That is really bad. It's really so. Here's my thought though.
Yeah,
I don't think ESPN. I think ESPN wants those teams in the Pac-12. I don't think they want to deal with the Pac-12 because I don't think there's anybody in that commissioner's chair. It was it Larry Scott was the last. If I'm not mistaken, who was the last?
I think so.
commissioner out there. He ran it horribly. He was a complete Corona bro. He was saying, he literally, his statement about Corona was, there's Corona over here, there's Corona over there, there's Corona everywhere, and that's why he canceled the season. That's a direct quote. He literally, it's like, dude, did you just read a Harry Potter book, like Avada Kedavra? Like, what? I think that ESPN ultimately will run college sports, them and Fox. Okay, CBS just, they're a dumpster fire too, but there are a lot of good teams in the Pac-12 outside of UCLA and USC. You know what? If I am a team, or if I'm a conference, if I'm the Pac-12, you know what I'm doing right now? I am going to San Diego State and saying, I'm buying out your contract. You're coming to the Pac. Let me tell you why. Because San Diego does not have a professional sports team outside the Padres anymore. They just built a really, really big stadium out in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm not telling San Diego State, like, hey, listen, we're going to give you because to San Diego State, if you tell them, look, we're going to give you $20-25 million in a TV rights deal, even though if it's $20-25 million, well, that's a lot of money. I think that there's a lot of bluffing going on here. I don't know if it's really hard for me to believe that there's going to be a situation where we only have 2 mega conferences within the next 5 to 10 years. I think in 10 years we may. I think there's just way too much money to buy out, but the Pac-12 is struggling. And I will tell you, I'm a fan of the Pac-12 After Dark. I love watching those teams play. Because I'm a football junkie.
Well, why can't it be Big 10 After Dark or Big 12 After Dark when they eventually all relocate and go to a different conference?
You literally took the words out of my mouth, right? Like, why can't they just do that? You know what is also interesting that I was thinking about in reference to the Pac-12? Joe, you live out there, so I ask you this. Is there a really big footprint of college athletics in that area?
No, it's not the same as it is on the East Coast, and I think that it's so strange or not even just the East Coast, but just like in the East and in the South. It's very strange being in a big city like LA and then knowing that there's 2 universities in the area. It feels like there's no marketing. It feels like there's not a lot of brand awareness.
That's so wild.
But it's just not a sports town. It is a lot of people who come from outside areas that move here for work, and then they root for their outside teams. And then maybe sometimes you go to a Rams or a Chargers game or a USC game. There is a big USC following. It feels like every other person you talk to is a USC fan, but I don't know if San Diego State can be a savior for the Pac-12. I admittedly,
it's not a savior. Don't get me twisted.
It's a small market. It's a great program with a great history, and I wonder why the hell they haven't made a move sooner. They should have had replacements lined up a lot sooner than this. And it seems like, and as Colin indicated, San Diego State and SMU apparently might be some of the teams that they're interested in.
But I will tell you though, if you get those 2 teams, there's a lot of money in Dallas. There's a lot of money in San Diego now.
But my problem is, and it's the same reason why that they haven't been able to get a broadcast partner, is that they're waiting too damn long. They're taking their time with the process where they're fighting for their life. They don't realize it, but they are fighting for their life. And I think that realistically, the only way for them to survive is not for them to go and acquire other teams from smaller conferences. They need to merge. They need to merge with somebody. The Big 12, which seems to be the one conference that is actively seeking their current members, instead of letting them poach, they need to merge. And if they do get poached for Oregon, Washington, and Utah, they need to maybe merge with the Mountain West, which would be a disgusting step down for them if that is the level of competition that they are transitioning to.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe some sort of merger needs to happen in order for them to survive, because they can't compete with the way that the Big Ten in the SEC are slowly developing and building themselves. They are growing in sheer numbers and brand size every single year, and the Pac-12 is just sitting here trying to pick up the phone and get in a conversation with SMU. Like, it's not going to last. It is not sustainable. They are doomed, absolutely doomed at this rate.
So I talked to a source at the Big 12. You want to hear something? I think I told you this. I think I told you this Tuesday. I know for a fact that conversations have been made with the Big 12 and Colorado. Know it for a fact.
I think you might have told me that.
See, I agree with you, and to the point of that is it's kind of like the Colorado is in this peculiar situation because of Dion ultimately, and they see that the Big 12 sees that Colorado's actually wanting to be serious about all of this. And so, like, the Big 12's already making moves. They went and got Cincinnati. People thought, oh, well, that's a bad move. You went and got Cincinnati. Well, they made a playoff. Okay, that's not necessarily a bad move.
And Houston's a good program in a big market. Like, everyone that they added is in a good spot, a good location with opportunities to continue to grow and expand.
I agree with that. And so I don't think we're going to get to two like mega conferences. I think ESPN wants the ACC. They want the Big 12. Okay, I think that they want that, and they would let that continue to go on. But in reference to the Pac-12, Joe, it's about to get really bad. And how, like, if you're an AD, or better yet, if you're a booster of like Oregon, like if you're Phil Knight, okay, you mean to tell me that Phil Knight can't pick up the phone right now and call any executive at ESPN and say, I want Oregon in the Big Ten, or Fox, or whoever it may be? You mean to tell me that Phil Knight can't pick up the phone and start dialing? Because when he starts getting involved,
yes,
then you have a situation. Now, the only thing that would hold me back on the Pac-12 not dissolving, okay, is that nobody wants those teams. So if you remember, Oregon and Oregon State got pretty pissed off that USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten. Big Ten says, listen, I'm done. Like the Big Ten said, we're done with expanding. We'll expand when the SEC expands. Mm-hmm. So where are those teams going to go if the Big Ten doesn't want to expand? So my question would be is, are we making a little too much of this because we've gotten statements from the Big Ten and the SEC that there's no more expanding after they add those two teams?
Well, we don't know for sure if that's like serious or not. It might be.
Kevin Warren came out and said openly, and I'm quoting,
yeah,
we will not be expanding before 2030 anymore.
Yeah, they said that, but at the same time, it's not like that is final. There is always a possibility.
He does not make that statement unless Fox and CBS has told him that we're not expanding.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. That still sets them up and leaves in the opportunity for them to go to the Big 12. The Big 12 is still definitely on the table for those teams. But I mean, I would argue if we've got Florida State in the background here trying to make this shift to try and get to the SEC, even though they have made it clear that they might not want to add more teams, like I just don't know how truly telling that is, that information is 100% that they do not have an aspiration to add any more teams. But I think that there's a lot of value in those brands. And as you're talking about, I think somebody like Phil Knight, who has so much power in the sports industry, like you said, all it takes is a phone call. The Big Ten might say that they're done expanding, but if Phil Knight gets on the phone with them, you don't think that Phil Knight couldn't persuade and bring Oregon and somebody else with him because they need an even amount of teams?
He'd bring Oregon State. I'm convinced of it. He would probably bring Oregon State because Oregon State has a big, if I'm not mistaken, a big Nike feel in it too.
Yeah.
But
I think there are brands, though. I think that there are significant brands after we move past Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Utah, Washington State. Those are all big brands that I think any of those conferences, the Big 10 or the Big 12, should aspire to go and get. I think that those would be major key adds instead of trying to go and handpick the scraps that are remaining from the American Conference. I think any of those programs would be better than trying to go from any of these group of 5 conferences. But other than that, yeah, it's a heap of crap. I mean, Colorado, you put in the conversation now too with Dion there and him building the brand of Colorado. But like, no one wants Cal. No one wants Stanford. No one wants any of those guys. No one really wants Arizona or Arizona State.
Those teams don't care about football. And so here's another thing too. Cal has more money than they know what to do with, and Stanford especially has more money than they know what to do with. What's funny about that is that they just don't give a shit and they don't see the writing on the wall, right? And
they were one. Stanford was one of the first to cut other sports during COVID, so they clearly don't care about sports
go
at all.
Look at their endowment. Their endowment money is ridiculous, in the billions. You don't care, and
Silicon just need to join the Ivy League and stop being so pompous. Just join the damn Ivy League. That's basically what you are at this point. They've gone so downhill. Them and Cal have not been competitive.
Well, let's call it what it is. They have gone very political. Okay, and in the sports world, when your university goes that political, whether on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. Okay, you go broke. Okay, look at what happened to Arkansas a long time ago. Look what's happening to Stanford and Cal, and both of them went in different directions. And when you start involved, because Joe, the truth is, people escape their normal lives and day-to-day lives. Like we see what's going on around the world. They try to escape their lives to watch sports. And here's another thing. Nobody's going to their games. Dude, Cal lost to Colorado last year. I'm pretty sure that the best high school team in the country could have beaten Colorado last year.
Yes.
That's how bad that they are, okay? So we'll just have to wait and see. All right, let's transition here as well. Joe, let's talk about Jeff Brohm. I think we'll spend a little bit of time on him at Louisville as well. You want to tell our friends, though, before we do that, about our good friends over at betonline.ag?
Yes. So if you're a big betting fan like me, and look, college football ended a while ago. The NFL ended a while ago. I haven't had anything fun to bet on. And look, Blake, I don't know about you. I get bored sometimes trying to watch basketball at the NBA and at the college level. You know what makes it more fun for me? Put a little money down, putting $5 down, putting a little money down on a Southern basketball game for them to cover. That is what gets me going and makes those games a lot more interesting. I'll watch any game if I've got money on it. And where I'm doing that is Bet Online. So if you want to have some fun during the offseason, if you're like me, if you're a college football junkie and you need a way to get through the offseason, go to betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit.
It's betonline.ag. BetOnline.ag.
I don't know why, but when you do it that way, that's like one of those things where it just gets me juiced up. I don't know why.
So I talked to them a long time ago, and I did that on accident.
Yeah.
Because they sent the promo code and said betonline.ag, betonline.ag. They had a typo. So I thought I was just reading it right.
You thought that I actually thought that was the same thing where they wanted an emphasis.
Yeah, I did too. Well, then come to find out, it was just an accidental typo.
It's hilarious.
Okay? So they were like, I guess that's our thing now. BetOnline.ag, BetOnline.ag. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about Louisville and their new head coach, Jeff Brohm. Look, I will tell you this, Joe. I do like Jeff Brohm as a guy. He did some really good things at Purdue. So if you don't know, Jeff Brohm was the head coach at Purdue. He left Purdue and then went to Louisville. Louisville being his home state, his home. So where he played, I get it, buddy. I'm going to tell you something you're not going to agree with.
Uh-oh.
I think that if he can recruit just a little bit better than what Louisville's been doing, they might have a little something. Because let me tell you something about Louisville. It's an amazing town. It's an amazing campus. I've been on it. I've been to it. I've seen their football field. Their football field sits like in a valley to where wherever you are in town, you can see the football field. At the time, it had the big Papa John's logo. I'm sure that's down now that he's, a racist piece of shit. But either way, like you when you're in Louisville and you got the distilleries and the night, it's like you're going to a clean Bourbon Street when you go downtown Louisville. I do think Louisville has an interesting, because we've seen them be in a situation where their basketball team's been really good, their baseball team's really good. They've put a lot of money in facilities. Joe, we've actually seen Kentucky start putting money into football, and look what they've done. They've been decent. I mean, they're not world beaters. They've had a couple 8, 9, 10 win seasons under Stoops. But Louisville's in a situation where they don't have to compete with the SEC in reference to day in, day out schedule. I think Jeff Brohm is a guy that could maybe reunite them. And I will tell you, I expect them to win 7 or 8 games. They've got a lot of pieces coming in now, a lot of pieces coming in. They got a lot of good pieces that are still there. They got a lot of athletic dudes. Like I remember watching the Florida State game last year, and I'm like, there's no reason that Louisville should be in there with them. They've played Ole Miss a couple times and been really competitive. I think Jeff Brohm gets them to a situation where you could see them in 8, 9 wins a year. I think that he can do it. The question is, does he put enough emphasis on recruiting? Look, I'll give an example. I know a couple kids from the Southeast that were going to Purdue, and then the SEC team started calling, and he could, they were like, yeah, whatever, we're not going to Indiana. I mean, have you ever been to Indiana, Joe? I mean,
yeah,
of course,
I love Indiana.
Indiana is a horrible state. It's a horrible. It's a horrible state. Nobody really thinks about Indiana. Like, oh, the Colts. Ooh, your stadium looks like Lucas Oil. Ooh, good for you.
It's an underrated state. It's better than other states.
Name one.
Arkansas.
That's not true.
I'd rather go to Indiana than Arkansas.
But you're not from the South.
That's true.
You're a South shamer.
I'm not a South shamer.
You hate the
I
South.
just like Indiana. I like Indiana. There's nothing wrong with
you like Indiana because Notre Dame's in there. Hey,
I've been to Indiana a lot.
Whataburger in South Bend?
I don't think they do. I don't know.
Okay, well then you're not really from. It's not a good place. I mean, it is what it is. Anyway,
yes.
Getting to Jeff Brohm, I think that he could do some really good things there, considering the athletes that they're going to be accustomed to getting. Unlike what he was able, I think, which is fair. He's going to be able to get better athletes at Louisville than he was at Purdue. I think that's fair.
So this might shock you, Blake, but I actually agree with you on this. I think that Louisville is it's a sleeping giant type of a program, not only because of the location, and I think that it as a college brand entity, it has a lot of pride for it, and it's one of those universities where when you go to it, you're excited to be a part of it. And there's a reason why Jeff Brohm came back, because he wanted to be a part of it, and he was waiting for that opportunity to be re-recruited to come back to Louisville. And I see what the level of success that he had at Purdue with pretty limited talent. Aiden O'Connell, who was the starting quarterback, the guy was a walk-on. He stinks. He's not that good of a quarterback, but he got him to a level where people are considering him to be.
He might be a 5th or 6th round pick, brother.
He might be, and
he literally
shouldn't be. He's not that good.
Very quickly, who he reminds me of? He's a poor man's Jared Goff. They look the exact same.
He's a very poor man's Jared Goff. Let's put it that way.
Same. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
But he was able to get really great production out of O'Connell. And then we look at the guys that he developed at receiver, David Bell, and I'm completely blanking on who's the Arizona Cardinals player, the 5'7" guy. Oh my God, I'm completely blanking on his name.
It starts with an R. Moore.
Rondell Moore, who torched Ohio State and was one of the most prolific receivers in Purdue history. He has been able to take these 3-star guys and develop them into really explosive players. And the thing that he's done, he's recruited a lot of athletes and turned them into really productive players. I mean, George Karlaftis, that one's even more surprising to me, that he was able to get a guy like that, develop him into a first-round pick. The talent development is what is going to make Brohm an exciting destination for a lot of mid-tier 4-star recruits. I think that is what is going to be his calling card here. He doesn't need to go get the 5 stars. He can get these lower end 4 stars, these 3-star guys, and turn them into potential stars, because he has a track record of doing it at a university that notoriously does not produce any NFL talent whatsoever. It is a miracle, the level of success that he had with not just on-field success, but player development. I also believe the last part on this is that Louisville has a really good opportunity here to be an NIL hotbed in a way. They need to fix their basketball situation, because their basketball program right now is
you can't have hookers and cocaine. And
they went from that to now it's like an AAU team where these guys are dicking around, dunking before games and not taking any shots. They clearly look like they have no care in the world of what happens for them. But that, if they fix both these programs, I think that they could go back to the massive level of success that they had. And there's a reason why they attracted Reuben Owens and almost had him committed, who was the number 1 running back in the class.
Right.
I'm disappointed he did not stay committed to Louisville. And I think I'd be even higher on the outlook if he stuck around. But still, nonetheless, there is a lot of opportunity here with all of those things.
Well, look, so I've been sitting on this for a little while now because I knew that ultimately we would talk about Jeff Brohm going to Louisville. Dude, if you go look at who he got from the portal, a lot of people aren't really high on Jack Plummer, okay? But I think he's
underrated.
He's extremely underrated. He fits exactly what, like when I saw that Jack Plummer was going to Louisville, I was like, dude, that is a really sneaky, very sneaky addition. And then I remember when the Gross Killebrew kid from A&M, the DB, went. I'm like,
he's a dude.
He's a dude. But then they went out and got Kevin Coleman from Jackson State, one of the 4 stars Dion was able to pull. And then Brohm out-recruited Dion to get Coleman into Louisville. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
They also got some guy who's trash.
Who?
His name's Jamari Trash.
I got to be honest. I didn't even see that. You talking about Jamari Thrash?
Oh, no. Is his name Thrash? God damn it. That would have been funnier.
You called a guy.
I thought it was Trash.
No, I'm like, wait, what?
I wish his last name was
not
Trash.
read?
No, apparently. It was before I had my coffee.
His last name is spelled THRASH.
That would have been the best name in college football if his name was Trash. Wow, I'm an idiot.
Jamari Trash. Oh, my God, Joe. Jesus.
Oh, man.
You should repent of your sins. Anyway, but then, like, he got Jimmy Callaway from Tennessee.
Yes.
I just think that he did some sneaky stuff. And by the way, then you go and look at the freshman class that they got enrolled, edge rushers, interior offensive linemen.
5 4 stars, number 31 in the country.
And listen, Joe, I'll be honest. I get it's 31. It might be the most underrated 31 ranked class in the country, and maybe ever. They got some dudes, bro. Jeff Brohm and them might upset somebody this upcoming season that no one thought was coming.
And one thing as well, look, I'm being totally realistic here. I don't want to be overly optimistic with their outlook, and I try for specifically 2023, what they can produce if we're talking about just that. If I'm being realistic, I have them around 7 wins. But at the same time, they have a pretty light schedule. This is another one of those teams for first-year head coaches. We've done a lot of these that he has a really, really light, easy schedule. His out-of-conference games are Murray State and Indiana, and they also play Kentucky. Kentucky's probably a loss for them, but outside of some of these other games that they played, some of these could be toss-ups. Like they playing NC State, which probably won't be a toss-up because NC State's a more established program.
Right.
I'm not going to say Notre Dame's a toss-up. Notre Dame should beat them. Pitt is a toss-up. They have I don't think Pitt lost their running back, Israel Abakinda, and I just don't know what redeeming players they currently have.
And Slova's transferred, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm a big Narduzzi fan because he's a former Rhode Island football player, but I can't be high on them in that matchup. I think that with Brohm, as we're talking about them to randomly upset somebody, that to me smells like a random upset for them to pull off. Duke is a little bit of a toss-up, but I think that Duke is transitioning and improving every single year, so I don't want to give that one as a toss-up.
Right.
Miami is the biggest question mark, is how
they're going to be
Miami this year.
They're going to be.
You think they will?
Yep.
You don't think Miami gets their ducks in a row and their shit together?
Nate, how? Why? What have they done?
Well, their recruiting class was very good.
Sounds good. You know who else had really good recruiting classes at Oregon and didn't do shit, really?
Mario Cristobal. Dude, Mario Cristobal, this might be a combo for another day. Might be one of the most We should do a most overrated coaches in college football show. I think that would stir some
I will
shit.
tell you, I think Mario Cristobal would be at least in my top 3.
I would put him up there because, again, he shows up, he does all this recruiting. He's the Kevin Sumlin of Miami, where he shows up, does all this recruiting, gets all these guys.
Sumlin actually didn't really have that great of recruiting classes.
But I remember all those years where he got all those.
If you really want to compare him to an A&M coach, it'd be more like Jimbo.
Yeah. But my point is, you remember those years where someone remember the class with Speedy Noyle and all those guys that they had.
Oh my God.
None of those guys developed. None of them improved. They all just stayed
Speedy
the
Noyle
same.
extremely told people in Louisiana that he was going to Texas A&M so he could smoke weed. That's a true statement. That's
that's bad.
True.
That's terrible.
Yeah, look, speaking on this Louisville, like Miami, buddy, let me tell you something, Joe. Joe, just Middle Tennessee State physically dominated Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M physically dominated Miami. There are too many. Look, if you're losing games, if you're 6-6 and, but you're building or whatever, okay. I can't get out of my head how bad they looked on the offensive and defensive line. They didn't really get better there. They had guys leave.
I very rarely will do this with Mario Cristobal, to give them the benefit of the doubt. That was one of the worst Power 5 rosters, like big name Power 5 rosters in the country, stepping in. He was stepping in with not a lot to work with because Manny Diaz stunk as a coach.
I highly disagree with that.
I didn't. There was no talent on that roster.
Okay, then give me an excuse for Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly.
They went and attacked the portal. Wait, Lincoln Riley got Caleb Williams.
But my point is, though, why shouldn't
I think that Miami was in a worse circumstance than both those
Hold on. You say, well, Blake, Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly went and attacked the portal. Why couldn't Cristobal? That's my point.
That's fair, but at the same time, I think that the starting point that Miami was a whole step behind both of those teams in terms of where they were at the start.
Sounds cute.
They don't have any draftable guys on this roster this year. Miami. But to get back to Louisville, though.
Okay.
To get back to Louisville.
All right. Can I just make one more point about Miami?
Yes.
Their fan base is the worst in the country.
Oh, yes. It's terrible because they're absolute fair weather fans. Most of them don't even go to the games. Most of them don't even watch the games.
So on their Twitter spaces, you know what their go-to Twitter spaces, you know what they call it, right?
No.
12-0. Last year, they tried to convince me that they were going 12-0. It's more realistic that they go 0-12 than 12-0.
So my dad is a Notre Dame alumni. He hates USC, but I actually do believe he hates Miami fans more than he hates USC fans because
wouldn't he?
At least USC has been really good. Like Miami's has those pockets of like elite years where they win national championships, but when they're mediocre, they act like they're the greatest team in the country. And I can't stand my stepsister went to Miami. I can't stand Miami alumni. They're all just sorority girls and frat bros, and that's it.
Well, what's
not a lot of brain cells.
What's crazy is when you look at their roster, okay, they're okay. I mean, their recruiting class is okay.
After this year, they've improved. They've taken a step forward. But
have they?
Yeah,
who's going to play quarterback?
Probably Tyler Van Dyke. Even though, again, I've said adamantly on this show he's terrible. He's not a good
called it. Speaking of trash, you were calling him trash.
Yeah, he's not a good quarterback.
I will be honest. I think that their offensive philosophy is horrendous. I think that their defensive philosophy is horrendous. And that's why I think going into Louisville, Jeff Brohm will piece Mario Cristobal apart. They lost Kevin Steele. I mean, dude, I'm just telling. They got rid of Josh Gaddis. There is so much dysfunction around Mario Cristobal, and everybody wants to give him an excuse because he's the golden boy of Saban, and because Saban always runs out there and says Mario Cristobal, Mario Cristobal, Mario Cristobal. At some point, the son of a bitch has got to win. And you know what? He had Justin freaking Herbert. We were talking about this on the last episode. Like, Joe, when you have really good quarterbacks, you got to win. The first game of the season in 2019, a true freshman, Bo Nix, literally licked his fingers and started spanking the ball ass.
Hey, look, one thing I will say about Mario Cristobal, why I'm not the biggest fan of him as well, I have two different people that I know of connections to him. One, I know that for a fact that he's a control freak, an absolute control freak, to the point where when he was at Oregon,
control freak, like he likes bondage.
No, no.
Okay.
In the sense that I know that he apparently, when he was at Oregon, he wouldn't let the social media team post anything until he reviewed it. That is how much of a
I'm okay with that.
But they would be sitting on their butts until 10 o'clock at night waiting for him to come look at the stuff. But I disagree. I think that that's ridiculous for just to post some pictures that he has to be the one to look at it. He should be spending his time more effectively than wasting it on crap like that.
Well,
and the other thing,
that's true.
He just seems like one of those guys that's way too much of a hardo, but there is no results for him being a hardo. Like I heard, apparently he's one of those guys who wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and he leaves the office at like 11 o'clock. And he designates like a couple of hours on the weekend to spend time with his family. Like he just seems like too much of a hardo, way too much of a hardo. And this just, I don't know why anyone would want to play with it. But I feel like there is still a relatability with Saban. I just don't get why any player would be like, yes, this guy seems like a cool dude. I want to go play for him. He just seems like a total dickhead.
I'm with you. Going to Louisville, I think they win that game. But getting back to them,
Yeah.
I think they're an 8-win team. I got them a win above you. I think that let me tell you something. The Jack Plummer thing for me is a really Jack Plummer's not a bad quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. And I think that's exactly what Brohm wants, okay, in his guy, which makes me really high on them. I will tell you. You want to hear? All right. So listen, I've never told anybody this. Now I'm about to tell it on the show. You know what one of my other favorite college football teams in the country is Louisville. Like,
really?
If it wasn't,
that makes sense.
No, but I'm just like 10 of those. Like,
yeah.
Like I really like Florida State. Okay. I love their tradition, and you know, A&M's probably dead last. But I just get a vibe that if the right guy gets in there, they could really make something happen.
Yeah, and I think Brohm is that guy, because if he does produce success, I do believe he would only leave unless he was enticed with a massive, massive offer for a massive program. Because
there are two things are going to happen. Either he's going to have severe success or that he's going to get fired.
Exactly. And I don't think he's going to get fired, because at the very least.
No, because Joe, if he can do it in the Big Ten, what makes me not believe that he can't do it in the ACC?
Exactly. For all he needs to produce, I think, in my eyes, for them as an athletic department, is win 8-9 games. Well, but he's capable of exceeding that.
You know what else is interesting? You know, stay with me here. What's Purdue's mascot?
Boilermaker.
Actually, you're wrong. They're called the Spoiler Makers. Every year they would beat a team they weren't supposed to. Is that going to happen this year? Is it Clemson? Is it Florida State? You know, like Brohm's had success with upsetting teams. That's what my thought. I like Jeff Brohm. You remember when Jeff Brohm, what was the name that he had on the back of his jersey when he was in the XFL? Do you remember when it like Daddy Brohm?
Oh, it was something like that. I'm gonna look it up really quick.
Okay.
But I do know what you're talking about. He was also one of those guys who he was always in front of the camera, and he was always doing like the really obnoxious interviews. I don't think he had anything on his jersey.
No, you had to have a nickname on the back of your jersey. Like, I think it was like a have to.
I can't find it. It's not showing any of them. It's only showing them from the front. I'm not able to find the backside.
Okay, first off, pause.
Can't say anything without getting the pause.
I mean, I know. I feel so bad when I say it every time now. I feel like a coke addict when I, like just have to say it every time. All right, Joe. Great episode here today.
Yes, sir.
Really good stuff. I do want to circle back on this Miami thing, though. I do want to circle back on this Miami thing at some point.
I think that'll be a fun topic. I think we should do
but bro, here's the thing:
top 3 most overrated coaches each.
Well, let's do that in the next episode. I guess just last thing on this though. Let me look this up because it's going to drive me crazy if we don't talk about this just really, 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 really quickly. So remember when Mario Cristobal was hired at Miami and they were like, dude, he's a game above 500 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting to me is when I look at his overall record, okay, he's 67 and 67.
It's a real epitome of success.
He's literally average. So that's why I was bringing it up. He went 5-7 last year at Miami. He was 35-13 at Oregon. He was 27-47 at Florida International. Now, I will give him a little bit of a benefit of a doubt in the sense of like, look, you were trying to rebuild the program. There's a reason Oregon hired you. You did some good things there because you recruited at a high level. But, dude, he's just a 500 coach, and we make such a big deal out of him that I just don't get it.
No, and I do believe we should break that down. I think that we should do that. I think that would be a fun topic. It would stir some shit.
Let's do it. And Miami fans already hate me, so
good.
Like a butt crack. Anyway, all right, we're out of here. Until next time, we'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good day. Have a good weekend. Peace out, Girl Scouts.